People think power is loud. They think control comes from dominance, from threats, from forcing your voice over someone else's. But the most dangerous power in this world has always been silent. It doesn't raise its tone, it doesn't announce itself. It walks into a room, sits quietly, and before anyone realizes what's happening, decisions start bending in its direction. Human beings are not controlled by force. They are controlled by feelings they don't fully understand. And once you understand how the mind reacts beneath awareness, influence becomes effortless, not aggressive, not visible, almost invisible. Most people live on autopilot. They react instead of choosing. They respond emotionally and then justify logically. This is the crack where silent influence enters. Because the mind wants comfort more than truth, safety more than logic, and familiarity more than freedom. Whoever understands this doesn't need to manipulate openly. They simply allow people to trap themselves. One of the darkest realities of human psychology is that attention is currency. Where attention goes, power flows. When someone feels fully seen by you, their guard lowers without permission. But attention is not constant talking, not excessive validation, not chasing. It is selective presence. It's the ability to be fully engaged for a moment and then emotionally unavailable the next. The human brain is addicted to contrast. Predictability kills desire. Uncertainty fuels obsession. When your attention feels earned rather than given freely, people start adjusting their behavior unconsciously just to receive it again. Not because you asked, because their mind wants to restore the emotional pattern it enjoyed. Silence itself is one of the most misunderstood tools. People fear silence because it exposes internal noise. When you don't rush to respond, when you don't fill every gap with explanations, the other person's mind begins working for you. They start assuming, they start projecting, they start over-explaining. Silence creates psychological pressure, and the one who breaks it usually reveals more than they intended. This isn't about being cold, it's about understanding that words reduce mystery and mystery sustains influence. Another uncomfortable truth is that humans mirror authority, not kindness. Kindness is appreciated, authority is followed. Authority doesn't mean aggression, it means emotional self-control. When you don't react to disrespect, when you don't get pulled into emotional chaos, the other person subconsciously assigns you higher status. The mind reads calm as confidence, and confidence feels like safety. People don't follow the loudest voice, they follow the most grounded one. There is also a powerful mechanism in the human mind related to validation scarcity. When approval is always available, it loses value. When it's rare, it becomes addictive. People don't crave love, they crave significance. When your validation is selective and aligned with behavior rather than emotion, people begin modifying themselves to qualify. This is how influence shifts silently, not by demanding change, but by rewarding alignment. Another layer most people never question is how emotions transfer. Emotions are contagious, but not equally. The dominant emotional state in any interaction controls the direction. If someone enters anxious and you remain calm, their nervous system starts syncing with yours. If someone is aggressive and you remain centered, their aggression weakens. Emotional control is psychological dominance, not because you overpower them, but because their system adjusts to yours without awareness. People also underestimate the power of framing. The mind doesn't react to reality, it reacts to perception. The same situation framed differently creates opposite responses. When you frame yourself as someone who chooses rather than needs, stays rather than clings, listens rather than persuades, the other person fills the gap by leaning forward. Humans chase what feels slightly out of reach but emotionally rewarding. There is a deep psychological effect linked to consistency. Once someone commits emotionally, verbally, or behaviorally, their mind tries to stay consistent to avoid internal conflict. Small agreements lead to larger ones, not because they were forced, but because the mind hates contradiction. Influence grows when people feel they decided, even when the direction was quietly guided. The darkest part of all this is realizing that most people don't want freedom. They want relief, relief from thinking, relief from uncertainty, relief from responsibility. When someone provides emotional structure without control, guidance without force, certainty without pressure, people surrender choice willingly, not consciously, subconsciously. This is why true influence never looks like control. It looks like understanding. It feels like comfort. It sounds like silence. It operates through restraint, timing, and emotional intelligence. And the more invisible it is, the more effective it becomes. Because the moment someone realizes they're being controlled, the spell breaks. But when they believe everything is their own idea, their loyalty becomes self-enforced. The mind doesn't resist influence. It resists being exposed. And once you understand that, you stop trying to change people. You simply change the psychological environment around them. And in that environment, they adjust on their own, thinking it was always their choice, their desire, their decision, never realizing how quietly the direction was set, how softly the frame was placed, how deeply the influence had already settled into their thinking, shaping reactions, guiding emotions, bending outcomes, all without a single command being spoken, without a single rule being stated, without any visible force at all. And this is where most people fail because they rush. They want results now. They want reactions, confessions, obedience, reassurance. But influence is not built through urgency. Urgency exposes need. And the moment need is felt, power shifts away from you. The mind instinctively pulls back from anyone who wants something too badly. Desire creates pressure, and pressure activates resistance. The person you want to influence doesn't even know why they're resisting. They just feel uncomfortable. So the darkest strategy is patience. Let people come to their own conclusions while you simply remain steady. There is also something unsettling about predictability. When people can read you completely, they stop respecting you. Not because you did anything wrong, but because the brain associates predictability with low threat and low value. Mystery, when controlled, creates psychological elevation. This doesn't mean playing games. It means not revealing everything at once, not explaining your every move, not defending yourself unnecessarily. The more you justify, the smaller you appear. The mind assumes that people who matter don't need to explain themselves repeatedly. Another silent lever is emotional contrast. If you are always warm, warmth becomes background noise. If you are occasionally distant, warmth becomes memorable. The brain records changes more strongly than constants. This is why people remember moments, not routines. When your emotional presence fluctuates naturally, people stay mentally engaged. They start monitoring you, not because you demanded attention, but because their nervous system is seeking equilibrium again. Most people think control is about making others feel small. In reality, the most effective influence comes from making people feel understood. When someone feels psychologically seen, they drop defenses. They talk more. They reveal insecurities. And once a person reveals themselves, the balance shifts, not because you use that information aggressively, but because they now associate safety with you. The mind protects what feels safe, and it follows what it trusts. There is also a deep psychological effect tied to non-reactivity. When someone tries to provoke you and fails, their internal hierarchy rearranges. They expected power over your emotions and didn't get it. That moment alone repositions you above them in their mental map. Emotional control is read as strength, even if no words are exchanged. This is why calm people unsettle chaotic ones. Chaos feeds on reaction, silence starves it. Another uncomfortable truth is that people test boundaries unconsciously, not to be disrespectful, but to locate your self-worth. When you allow small violations, the mind assumes larger ones are possible. When you calmly hold a boundary without drama, explanation, or anger, the other person adjusts automatically. You don't need to threaten consequences. Consistency itself becomes the consequence. The human mind is also deeply influenced by perceived options. When someone believes you have choices, they value your presence more. When they sense you have no alternatives, they devalue you without meaning to. This is why independence is magnetic. Not financial independence alone, but emotional independence. When your happiness doesn't hinge on someone else's behavior, they feel that stability and lean toward it. People also underestimate the power of timing. Saying the right thing at the wrong moment weakens it. Saying very little at the right moment amplifies it. When emotions are high, logic doesn't enter. When emotions settle, suggestions land deeper. Influence is less about what you say and more about when the mind is open enough to absorb it. There is a silent dominance in allowing people to underestimate you. When someone believes they understand you fully, they stop guarding themselves. Overexposure creates blindness. You don't need to prove intelligence, strength, or capability. Let outcomes speak later. The shock of realization is far more powerful than early displays. Another layer of dark psychology lies in how people attach meaning. Humans don't respond to facts. They respond to stories they tell themselves. When you allow them to assign positive meaning to your actions without correcting or clarifying too much, that meaning strengthens internally. The brain defends its own interpretations more fiercely than external persuasion. And perhaps the most unsettling realization of all is this: people don't remember what you said as much as how they felt around you. If they felt calm, valued, curious, slightly unsure but safe, your influence embeds itself emotionally. Emotional memory outlives logical memory. This is why presence outweighs persuasion. Control is never about domination, it's about alignment. When people feel aligned with you emotionally, mentally, and energetically, they move in your direction naturally. They think they chose it. They believe it benefits them. And in many ways, it does. Because the most powerful influence doesn't feel like force. It feels like clarity. It feels like ease. It feels like their own idea forming quietly in their mind, while you simply remain composed, observant, patient, letting the psychological mechanisms do what they've always done beneath the surface, guiding behavior, shaping decisions, tightening attachment, softening resistance, deepening influence moment by moment, without noise, without confrontation, without ever needing to announce that control was already there. And once you understand this, you stop chasing reactions altogether. You stop measuring your worth by how quickly someone responds, how intensely they react, or how much reassurance they give you. Because the need for reassurance is itself a leak of power. The human mind is drawn towards stability, and stability is felt when someone is comfortable not being chosen immediately. Detachment is not absence of interest, it is absence of desperation. And the brain can sense the difference instantly. There is also a subtle psychological pull in being emotionally predictable, but mentally unpredictable. When your values are consistent, but your responses are not always obvious, people stay engaged. They know you are safe, but they don't feel bored. Boredom is the enemy of influence. The mind wanders when it feels nothing new. But when curiosity is triggered, attention locks in. Another silent mechanism operates through restraint in self-disclosure. People assume closeness is built by sharing everything. In reality, closeness is built by mutual discovery. When you reveal too much too fast, The mind feels it has reached the end. When information unfolds gradually, the brain stays invested. This isn't manipulation, it's pacing. Just like music loses impact if played all at once, connection loses depth when there's no rhythm. People also respond strongly to perceived emotional leadership. In uncertain situations, the calmest person becomes the reference point. When you don't rush to label emotions, when you don't panic, when you don't escalate tension, others subconsciously look to you for cues. Their emotional compass shifts toward yours. This is why emotional maturity often feels intimidating. It highlights instability without pointing it out. Another overlooked aspect is how people react to being challenged versus being questioned. Direct challenges activate defense. Gentle questions activate reflection. When someone starts explaining themselves to you voluntarily, influence has already begun. You didn't force them to justify anything. Their own mind stepped into the role. And once people start explaining, they also start adjusting. There is power in not correcting people immediately. When someone misunderstands you and you don't rush to fix it, their mind fills the gaps. Often it fills them in your favor. Silence allows projection. Projection reveals desire, fear, and expectation. Observing that quietly gives you insight without asking a single question. Most people sabotage their influence by trying to be liked. Likability is fragile. Respect is durable. Respect grows when you don't compromise your emotional center to maintain harmony. Discomfort handled calmly builds credibility. People may not like it in the moment, but their mind registers strength. Another deep psychological hook is allowing people to invest. The more effort someone puts into you, the more they value you. This is why doing everything for someone weakens your position. When they contribute emotionally, mentally, or practically, attachment strengthens. Not because of what you gave them, but because of what they gave to you. The mind also responds to perceived momentum. When you appear to be moving forward, regardless of who joins you, people feel compelled to keep up. Stagnation repels, direction attracts. You don't need to announce goals or plans. Quiet progress is louder than explanation. And then there is the uncomfortable reality of emotional withdrawal, not as punishment, not as drama, but as natural consequence. When energy is removed without argument, the mind scrambles to understand why. It searches internally. It replays interactions. This internal loop strengthens focus on you far more than confrontation ever could. Influence deepens when you become hard to emotionally shake. When praise doesn't inflate you and criticism doesn't destabilize you, people stop trying to control you through emotion. And when they realize they can't move you easily, they move themselves instead. The darkest psychological leverage is not fear. Fear creates resistance. The strongest leverage is emotional certainty. When someone feels that you are grounded, self-directed, and unbothered by outcomes, they begin orbiting your stability, not because you pulled them, but because their own system seeks balance. And all of this works best when it's not used aggressively, not used consciously in every moment, not turned into performance, because the mind can sense intention. The quieter the intent, the stronger the effect. The moment you try to control, control dissolves. The moment you understand, influence settles in, operating beneath words, beneath logic, beneath awareness, shaping interactions, bending dynamics, guiding behavior in directions that feel natural, voluntary, inevitable. As conversations continue, as silence stretches, as patterns form, as people adjust without realizing why, as the psychological gravity remains steady, pulling gently, constantly, without ever needing to arrive at a final statement or an ending thought. So remember this: real power never begs, never explains, never forces, and never chases. It stands still while others move. It stays silent while others reveal themselves. And it understands this one brutal truth. The moment you master your emotions, control your reactions, and stop needing outcomes, the world starts adjusting to you automatically because the strongest mind in the room is always the one that doesn't need to prove it.